very important. Your soulmate is about to contact you. Be ready. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. If these words have found you today, take a deep breath because there is a reason your eyes landed here at this exact moment. This message is for you, the person who has been carrying questions in silence, the person who has felt an unexplainable shift in energy, the person who keeps sensing that something meaningful is approaching even if there is no visible evidence yet. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind understands. Sometimes your intuition begins whispering long before reality catches up. And perhaps this is one of those moments. Perhaps you have been feeling it lately. The sudden memories. The unexpected emotions. The dreams that feel more vivid than usual. The repeated numbers appearing everywhere you look, 1111, 222, 333, 444. Whether you see them as signs, synchronicities, or simply reminders to pay attention, they often arrive when life is preparing to reveal something important. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Someone has been thinking about you much more than you realize. Someone has been replaying old conversations, revisiting memories, and reflecting upon moments they once considered ordinary but now understand carried much deeper meaning. They have tried to stay busy. They have tried to focus on responsibilities. They have attempted to convince themselves that enough time would create emotional distance. Yet emotions have a remarkable way of resurfacing when they are genuine. Connections that leave lasting impressions rarely disappear completely. They evolve. They transform. They wait patiently beneath the surface until the timing feels right for understanding to emerge. This message is for you because perhaps you've sensed this energy already. Perhaps there have been moments when someone unexpectedly entered your thoughts. Perhaps you've experienced dreams that felt strangely real. Perhaps you felt waves of emotion that arrived without explanation. Maybe you've looked at your phone more often than usual, not because you expect anything specific, but because deep inside there is a quiet feeling telling you that something is changing. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There are seasons in life when people become aware of truths they once ignored. They begin understanding what truly matters. They start recognizing the significance of individuals who brought peace into their lives rather than confusion. They realize that emotional safety is rare. They understand that authentic connections cannot simply be replaced. Sometimes this awareness arrives gradually. Sometimes it arrives unexpectedly, often during quiet evenings when distractions disappear and reflection takes their place. Imagine someone sitting alone late at night, scrolling through old messages, remembering conversations that once made them feel understood, accepted, and genuinely seen. Imagine them realizing that despite everything that has happened, certain feelings never fully disappeared. They simply remained hidden beneath layers of responsibility, fear, uncertainty, and emotional hesitation. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Human beings often believe they have unlimited time to say what they feel. They assume opportunities will always remain available. They postpone difficult conversations because vulnerability feels uncomfortable. They delay appreciation because they believe there will always be another chance. Yet life teaches us that timing matters. Reflection matters. Emotional maturity matters. And eventually many people reach a point where silence becomes heavier than honesty. They begin understanding that avoiding emotions does not erase them. It only postpones understanding. They begin realizing that meaningful people leave lasting impressions. They start appreciating kindness they once overlooked. They remember patience they once underestimated. They recognize loyalty they once assumed would always remain available. This message is for you because perhaps someone connected to your story is experiencing exactly that process right now. Perhaps they are beginning to understand your significance in ways they never understood before. Perhaps they are recognizing that your presence represented peace during chaotic seasons. Perhaps they are remembering how safe they felt around you. Perhaps they are finally understanding that genuine connection is built through consistency, understanding, emotional availability, and authenticity rather than excitement alone. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Think about how much you have changed throughout your own journey. There was a time when uncertainty consumed your thoughts. There was a time when unanswered questions felt unbearable. There was a time when another person's silence influenced your emotional well-being far more than it should have. But look at who you are becoming. You are stronger. You are wiser. You are more self-aware. You have learned that your value does not depend upon someone else's timing. You have discovered that your happiness cannot remain entirely dependent upon circumstances outside your control. You have developed boundaries. You have learned patience. You have learned how to create peace within yourself even when external situations remain unclear. That growth matters because it prepares you for new chapters. It prepares you to receive clarity without losing yourself in the process. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Sometimes people retreat because they are afraid. They fear vulnerability. They fear rejection. They fear admitting emotions they spent years trying to suppress. They fear changing stories they convinced themselves were already finished. But growth changes people. Reflection changes people. Experience changes people. Over time, individuals begin understanding that honesty creates freedom. They realize that expressing appreciation matters. They recognize that emotional authenticity is far more fulfilling than maintaining appearances. Perhaps someone is reaching that realization now. Perhaps they are recognizing that carrying feelings privately has become exhausting. Perhaps they are understanding that certain conversations deserve to happen. Perhaps they are realizing that some people remain meaningful regardless of time, distance, or circumstances. This message is for you because perhaps life is encouraging you to remain open without becoming attached to specific outcomes. It is inviting you to trust your own growth. It is reminding you that you are no longer the version of yourself who waited endlessly for validation. You are becoming someone who values clarity, consistency, and mutual effort. You are becoming someone who understands that communication should create peace rather than anxiety. You are becoming someone who recognizes their own worth regardless of whether others acknowledge it immediately. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Maybe you've noticed synchronicities appearing more frequently lately. Maybe certain songs continue resurfacing. Maybe dreams feel more intense. Maybe old memories have returned unexpectedly. Whether you interpret these experiences spiritually or simply as invitations to reflect more deeply, they can remind you of something important: growth is happening. Transformation is happening. Understanding is happening. Even when you cannot see visible evidence, life continues moving beneath the surface. This message is for you because there are still chapters waiting to unfold. There are still conversations waiting to happen. There are still truths waiting to emerge. Yet perhaps the most important message today is not simply about someone reaching out. Perhaps it is about your own readiness. Are you ready to receive clarity without abandoning your peace? Are you ready to hear words you once waited years to hear while remaining grounded in your own value? Are you ready to embrace possibilities without forgetting the lessons you have learned? Because readiness is not about expecting a specific outcome. Readiness is about knowing that regardless of what happens, you will remain whole. You will remain worthy. You will remain complete. And perhaps somewhere, someone is gathering the courage to speak honestly, to acknowledge emotions they once denied, and to reconnect with a part of their story they never truly forgot. Perhaps they are realizing that some connections remain significant because they were never meant to be forgotten. Perhaps they are understanding that your presence changed them in ways they never expected. And perhaps the message they are preparing to send carries more emotion, more reflection, and more truth than either of you ever imagined possible. But until that moment arrives, continue nurturing your own life, continue protecting your own peace, and continue trusting that whatever is meant for you will never require you to lose yourself in order to receive it. Because you have already become someone extraordinary, and whatever chapter unfolds next should add to your peace, not take it away. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There are moments in life when something begins shifting long before we can see evidence of it. It starts as a feeling, a quiet nudge within your spirit, an unexplainable sense that a chapter you thought was closed is slowly being revisited by someone who never truly stopped carrying it in their heart. This message is for you because perhaps you've been feeling that shift lately. Perhaps you've noticed yourself thinking about someone unexpectedly. Perhaps certain memories have resurfaced at random times. Perhaps you have felt waves of emotion that seem to arrive out of nowhere, leaving you wondering why your heart feels connected to something you cannot fully explain. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Sometimes people walk away from meaningful connections believing they have all the time in the world to revisit them later. They convince themselves that feelings can be postponed, that conversations can wait, and that emotions can simply be placed aside until life feels easier, calmer, or more convenient. But the heart does not always follow schedules. The soul does not operate according to timelines created by fear, uncertainty, or emotional hesitation. There are connections that continue speaking quietly within us even when years have passed, even when distance has grown, and even when circumstances seem to suggest that everything should have been forgotten by now. This message is for you because perhaps someone connected to your story is beginning to realize exactly that. Perhaps they have reached a stage in life where they can no longer ignore what their heart has been trying to tell them. Perhaps they are understanding that some people leave impressions so profound that no amount of distraction can completely erase them. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Imagine someone sitting alone during the late hours of the night, scrolling through old conversations, rereading messages they once overlooked, remembering laughter they once took for granted, and reflecting upon moments they once assumed would always remain available. Imagine them pausing for a moment, realizing that your presence brought something into their life that they have struggled to find elsewhere. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was understanding. Maybe it was emotional safety. Maybe it was simply the ability to be themselves without fear of judgment. Whatever it was, they are beginning to recognize its significance now. Reflection has a remarkable way of changing perspective. Time has a remarkable way of revealing what truly matters. People grow. People mature. People begin understanding lessons they were not emotionally prepared to understand before. This message is for you because perhaps someone is finally seeing your value in ways they never saw it before. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There are individuals who spend years convincing themselves they do not need vulnerability. They believe independence means never acknowledging emotions. They believe strength means carrying everything alone. They believe avoiding difficult conversations protects them from disappointment. But eventually they discover that avoiding emotions only creates distance from themselves. Eventually they realize that authenticity feels far more fulfilling than pretending. Eventually they understand that meaningful connections deserve honesty, appreciation, and communication. Perhaps someone connected to your story is reaching that realization now. Perhaps they are discovering that silence has become heavier than expression. Perhaps they are understanding that carrying unspoken feelings has become emotionally exhausting. Perhaps they are beginning to recognize that there are conversations worth having, regardless of uncertainty. This message is for you because maybe you've spent too much time wondering if someone ever truly appreciated your presence. Maybe you've questioned whether your kindness mattered. Maybe you've wondered if your patience was ever acknowledged. But genuine people always leave lasting impressions. Authentic hearts remain memorable because they provide experiences that cannot easily be replaced. They create emotional safety. They create comfort. They create spaces where people feel accepted exactly as they are. Those experiences stay with us, often revealing their significance much later in life. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Think about how much you've changed over the years. There was a version of you who waited endlessly for explanations. There was a version of you who believed another person's recognition would determine your happiness. There was a version of you who searched constantly for certainty. Yet look at where you are now. You have become stronger. You have become wiser. You have learned that your worth exists independently of someone else's awareness. You have learned that emotional maturity involves trusting yourself even when situations remain unclear. You have learned that peace is more valuable than endless questioning. You have learned how to create stability within yourself instead of relying entirely upon external circumstances. That growth matters because it prepares you for whatever comes next. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Maybe you've noticed signs lately. Maybe repeating numbers continue appearing in unexpected moments. Maybe songs connected to certain memories seem to play more frequently. Maybe dreams feel more vivid than usual. Whether you view these experiences as spiritual reminders, meaningful coincidences, or invitations to reflect more deeply upon your own journey, they can still offer something valuable. They encourage presence. They encourage gratitude. They encourage awareness. They remind you that transformation often happens quietly beneath the surface long before visible changes emerge. This message is for you because perhaps someone else is transforming too. Perhaps they are confronting fears they once avoided. Perhaps they are reflecting upon choices influenced by uncertainty. Perhaps they are recognizing that emotional availability is not weakness but strength. Perhaps they are understanding that genuine connection deserves acknowledgement rather than avoidance. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Human beings often assume opportunities will remain available indefinitely. They believe they can revisit meaningful experiences whenever they choose. Yet time teaches us that appreciation matters. Communication matters. Emotional honesty matters. There comes a point when people begin recognizing that waiting too long creates regret. They realize that some conversations should not remain unfinished forever. They understand that expressing gratitude should not be postponed endlessly. Perhaps someone connected to your story is feeling that urgency now. Perhaps they are gathering courage. Perhaps they are preparing themselves emotionally for conversations they once believed they would never have. Perhaps they are realizing that reconnecting requires vulnerability, but vulnerability creates opportunities for growth, understanding, and healing. This message is for you because regardless of what someone else chooses, your journey remains meaningful. Continue nurturing your dreams. Continue protecting your peace. Continue investing in your own well-being. Continue creating a life aligned with your values. Continue surrounding yourself with people who appreciate your authenticity. Continue honoring the person you have become through every challenge, every lesson, and every season of uncertainty. Because readiness is not about waiting anxiously for another person's actions. Readiness is about standing firmly within your own worth. It is about knowing that your happiness remains yours regardless of circumstances. It is about understanding that meaningful connections should enhance your life rather than consume it. And perhaps somewhere, someone is finally understanding that your presence represented something extraordinary. Perhaps they are realizing that your kindness changed them in ways they never anticipated. Perhaps they are discovering that despite time, despite distance, despite silence, certain connections continue carrying significance because they were built upon authenticity. And perhaps the message they are preparing to send is not simply a conversation. Perhaps it is an acknowledgement, an appreciation, a reflection, and a truth they have carried quietly within themselves for much longer than anyone realizes. Until then, remain open, remain grounded, and continue trusting that whatever belongs within your story will arrive at the right moment, carrying lessons, clarity, and understanding that align with the person you have become. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There are moments in life when the energy around you begins to change before anything visible actually happens. You cannot explain it logically. You cannot point to evidence. Yet deep inside, there is a quiet knowing, an awareness that something long delayed is beginning to move again. This message is for you because perhaps you've been feeling that lately. Perhaps you've noticed an unusual calm replacing anxiety. Perhaps memories that once caused pain now carry a different feeling. Perhaps you keep sensing that an unfinished chapter is preparing to speak, that words left unsaid are becoming too heavy for someone to continue carrying. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There are people who spend years convincing themselves they no longer care, convincing themselves they have successfully buried emotions beneath responsibilities, routines, obligations, and distractions. They tell themselves they have moved on. They tell themselves that enough time has passed. They tell themselves that certain connections belong entirely to the past. Yet the heart has its own language. It remembers emotional safety. It remembers genuine understanding. It remembers conversations that felt effortless. It remembers the rare experience of being fully accepted without needing to pretend, impress, or perform. And eventually those memories begin asking for attention again. Not because life is trying to create confusion, but because growth often requires honesty. Growth often requires acknowledging truths that were once too difficult to face. This message is for you because perhaps someone connected to your story is experiencing exactly that. Perhaps they are realizing that despite everything they have accomplished, despite all the responsibilities they carry, despite every attempt to remain emotionally distant, there is still a part of them that remembers your presence with remarkable clarity. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Imagine someone looking at their phone late at night, typing a message, deleting it, typing another message, then putting the phone down entirely. Imagine them wondering whether reaching out would be welcomed or misunderstood. Imagine them asking themselves questions they never expected to ask. Will too much time have passed? Will they still be remembered? Will there still be space for honesty after so much silence? These questions emerge because emotional vulnerability can feel intimidating. People fear rejection. They fear disrupting the lives they have built. They fear confronting emotions they spent years trying to suppress. Yet there comes a point when silence becomes more uncomfortable than communication. There comes a moment when the possibility of clarity feels more meaningful than the comfort of avoidance. This message is for you because perhaps someone is approaching that moment now. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Human beings often underestimate the impact meaningful people have upon their lives. They assume memories fade quickly. They assume emotional impressions disappear with time. Yet certain experiences remain significant because they represented something deeper than ordinary connection. They represented peace. They represented authenticity. They represented emotional safety during seasons when life felt uncertain. People do not easily forget experiences that made them feel understood. They do not easily forget moments when someone believed in them despite their doubts. They do not easily forget individuals who offered kindness without expectations and compassion without judgment. Perhaps someone is finally recognizing that your presence brought exactly those qualities into their life. Perhaps they are beginning to understand that what they once considered ordinary was actually rare. This message is for you because maybe you've spent years wondering whether your efforts mattered. Maybe you've questioned whether your patience was appreciated. Maybe you've wondered if your support made any lasting difference. But authentic hearts always leave impressions. Genuine care always leaves impressions. The people who stand beside us during difficult seasons become part of our emotional foundation. They influence how we view relationships. They shape our understanding of trust. They teach us what healthy connection feels like. Those lessons remain meaningful long after circumstances change. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Think about your own growth for a moment. Think about who you were when this journey first began. Think about how much emotional energy you invested searching for explanations. Think about how many nights you spent replaying conversations, questioning yourself, and hoping for clarity. Yet look at who you have become. You have developed resilience. You have discovered inner stability. You have learned that your value remains intact regardless of another person's timing. You have learned that your peace deserves protection. You have realized that waiting endlessly for answers prevents you from fully embracing the life available to you right now. That transformation is powerful because it changes everything. It changes your expectations. It changes your boundaries. It changes the way you approach relationships. It allows you to remain open-hearted without becoming dependent upon outcomes you cannot control. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Maybe you've noticed synchronicities appearing more frequently. Maybe certain songs continue resurfacing unexpectedly. Maybe dreams have become more vivid. Maybe you feel emotionally reflective in ways that surprise you. Whether these experiences are spiritual signs, meaningful reminders, or invitations to become more mindful, they can encourage self-awareness. They remind you to appreciate your journey. They remind you to recognize how far you've come. They remind you that transformation often occurs quietly beneath the surface before visible changes emerge. This message is for you because perhaps someone else is transforming too. Perhaps they are confronting fears they once avoided. Perhaps they are recognizing that emotional honesty creates freedom rather than weakness. Perhaps they are understanding that appreciation should not remain hidden indefinitely. Perhaps they are realizing that meaningful people deserve acknowledgement. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There are seasons when people begin re-evaluating their priorities. They realize that achievements alone do not create fulfillment. They understand that emotional connection matters. They recognize that authenticity is more valuable than maintaining appearances. They begin appreciating qualities they once overlooked because maturity provides new perspectives. Maybe someone connected to your story is experiencing exactly that. Maybe they are understanding that vulnerability is not something to fear. Maybe they are learning that reaching out is not a sign of weakness but a sign of growth. Maybe they are discovering that conversations left unfinished continue occupying space within the heart until they are finally addressed. This message is for you because whatever another person chooses, your worth remains unchanged. Continue creating a life aligned with your values. Continue investing in your goals. Continue nurturing relationships that support your well-being. Continue honoring your boundaries. Continue protecting your peace. Because readiness is not about waiting anxiously for someone else's actions. Readiness is about knowing that you have already built a life rooted in self-respect, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. It is about understanding that meaningful connections should complement your happiness rather than determine it. It is about trusting that whatever belongs within your story will arrive at the appropriate moment. And perhaps somewhere, someone is finally understanding that your presence represented more than they ever allowed themselves to admit. Perhaps they are gathering courage. Perhaps they are preparing to express appreciation they delayed for too long. Perhaps they are recognizing that despite time, despite distance, and despite silence, certain people continue carrying significance because they remind us of who we are when we feel most authentic. And perhaps the message they are preparing to send carries not only words, but reflection, gratitude, honesty, and an understanding that has been quietly developing for much longer than anyone realizes. Until then, remain grounded within your own journey, trust the growth that has occurred within you, and remember that your happiness does not depend upon another person's readiness. Your happiness already belongs to you, and anything meaningful that arrives should simply add to the peace you have worked so hard to create. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There comes a moment in life when everything that once felt uncertain begins to settle, not because every question receives an answer, but because you finally realize that your peace was never meant to depend upon another person's timing. This message is for you because perhaps you have spent far too long carrying the weight of possibilities, wondering if certain conversations would ever happen, wondering if certain feelings would ever be acknowledged, wondering if someone who once meant so much would ever gather the courage to speak honestly. Yet through all of that waiting, something extraordinary happened. You changed. You evolved. You became stronger. You learned how to comfort yourself during difficult moments. You learned how to create stability within your own life. You learned that your happiness could not remain suspended while waiting for someone else to understand what your heart had known all along. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Human beings often believe they can postpone emotional truth indefinitely. They convince themselves that time alone will resolve everything. They believe that if they ignore certain feelings long enough, those feelings will eventually disappear. But emotions do not operate according to schedules. Genuine connections do not simply fade because circumstances become complicated. Instead, they often transform. They become quieter. They move beneath the surface. They wait patiently for moments when people are finally mature enough, reflective enough, and emotionally available enough to recognize their significance. This message is for you because perhaps someone connected to your journey has reached that point. Perhaps they are beginning to understand that some people leave impressions that continue influencing us long after ordinary memories have faded. Perhaps they are recognizing that your presence represented something they have struggled to find elsewhere. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Imagine someone waking up each day carrying thoughts they never expected to revisit. Imagine them trying to focus on routines while old memories continue resurfacing unexpectedly. Imagine them hearing songs that remind them of conversations they once cherished. Imagine them remembering moments when they felt understood without needing to explain themselves. Imagine them realizing that despite years of attempting to move forward, there remains gratitude, appreciation, and emotional significance connected to someone they never truly forgot. Reflection changes perspective. Reflection allows people to revisit experiences with greater maturity. It encourages them to acknowledge qualities they once overlooked. It invites them to understand that emotional safety is not common. Authenticity is not common. Genuine kindness is not common. Those realizations matter because they reshape how people interpret their own stories. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Maybe you've sensed this shift already. Maybe you've noticed yourself becoming calmer. Maybe uncertainty no longer affects you the way it once did. Maybe you've stopped searching for signs because you've become more focused on building a meaningful life in the present moment. Maybe you've learned that waiting endlessly for clarity prevents you from fully embracing your own growth. Those changes deserve recognition because they reveal emotional maturity. They reveal resilience. They reveal your willingness to prioritize your well-being rather than allowing unanswered questions to consume your energy. This message is for you because healing deserves appreciation. Healing deserves gratitude. Healing deserves acknowledgement. Think about everything you've survived. Think about how many times disappointment encouraged you to question yourself. Think about how many opportunities you had to become bitter. Yet instead, you chose growth. You chose reflection. You chose self-awareness. You chose to continue believing that healthy connections still exist. That choice matters because it demonstrates extraordinary strength. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There are people who eventually realize that emotional honesty creates freedom. They understand that carrying unspoken appreciation becomes exhausting. They recognize that meaningful conversations deserve to happen. They acknowledge that vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. It is maturity. It is evidence of someone becoming more authentic. Perhaps someone connected to your journey is beginning to understand those lessons now. Perhaps they are realizing that maintaining silence no longer feels comfortable. Perhaps they are recognizing that expressing gratitude matters. Perhaps they are understanding that people who bring peace into our lives should never remain unacknowledged indefinitely. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Maybe you've noticed repeating numbers appearing more frequently lately. Maybe 1111 catches your attention unexpectedly. Maybe 222 appears during moments of reflection. Whether you interpret these experiences spiritually or simply as invitations to become more mindful, they can still serve an important purpose. They remind you to remain present. They remind you to trust your own journey. They remind you to appreciate the person you have become. Transformation rarely happens dramatically. More often it unfolds quietly, through countless small decisions made every day. Choosing peace over overthinking. Choosing self-respect over self-sacrifice. Choosing growth over stagnation. Choosing authenticity over performance. Those decisions accumulate, eventually creating entirely new versions of ourselves. This message is for you because perhaps you've already become someone completely different from the person who first began this journey. Perhaps you've become someone who no longer requires certainty in order to feel secure. Perhaps you've become someone who understands that genuine relationships should create calm rather than confusion. Perhaps you've learned that emotional availability matters more than potential. Perhaps you've realized that consistency matters more than promises. Those lessons are valuable because they shape your future. They influence the relationships you cultivate. They determine the standards you establish. They help you recognize connections aligned with your values. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There are still experiences waiting ahead. There are still conversations capable of creating understanding. There are still opportunities for healing, clarity, and emotional fulfillment. Yet perhaps the most important truth is this: readiness is not about expecting another person to arrive and complete your happiness. Readiness is about recognizing that your happiness already exists. It is about understanding that you are already whole. It is about trusting that anything meaningful entering your life should complement the peace you have worked so hard to build. This message is for you because perhaps someone is finally realizing what your presence represented. Perhaps they are understanding that your kindness changed them in ways they never anticipated. Perhaps they are recognizing that your patience, your compassion, and your authenticity created memories that continue carrying significance. Perhaps they are gathering courage to speak honestly because they have reached a stage where silence feels heavier than vulnerability. But regardless of what another person chooses, continue investing in your own life. Continue nurturing your dreams. Continue creating experiences aligned with your values. Continue protecting your peace. Continue surrounding yourself with individuals who appreciate your presence. Continue honoring the remarkable person you have become. Because while someone else may be preparing to reconnect with a chapter they once believed was finished, you have already discovered something far more powerful. You have discovered your own worth. You have discovered your own resilience. You have discovered your own ability to create joy independently of circumstances you cannot control. And once a person truly understands that, they stop waiting for external events to determine their happiness. They begin living fully, trusting that whatever belongs within their story will arrive at exactly the right time. And perhaps that is the most beautiful message of all, because if someone is preparing to reach out, let it arrive as an addition to your peace rather than the source of it. Let it meet the stronger, wiser, and more grounded version of yourself that emerged through every challenge, every lesson, and every season of uncertainty. Because you have already become someone extraordinary, and nothing that happens next can take that away from you.